And now let's talk about those numbers you saw yesterday from the National Bureau of Statistics, where inflation rates slightly eased in April. According to that latest report, headline inflation dropped to 23.71%, and that's down from what we had in March, where we talked about an increase. On a year-on-year basis, headline inflation was 9.99% lower than the 33.69, while on a month-on-month basis, it stood at 1.86 in April, and that's down from 3.90, representing a 2.04%. Core inflation was also top on the list. That's an exclusion of food and energy, stood at 23.38% from 26.89%. Food inflation fell again, down from 40.53, that's year on year, in April last year, due to change in, that was because of the base. But of course, talking about food inflation, we've seen the challenge of security or insecurity creep back into the agriculture sector. States like Benue, and we saw high food inflation coming from Benue, and yet there's a drop in inflation. Let's try to understand the numbers now. We're going to be talking to Dr. Ayodiji Abel, the Managing Director and Chief Business Officer of Optimus by AfriInvest, joins us virtually. Mr. Abel, or Dr. Abel, beg your pardon. Good morning and welcome to the program. Were you surprised? I did see some projections, and it wasn't a drop in inflation just 1 month after we had that uptick.
Okay, thank you very much. And looking at the numbers, there's no surprise. If we look at the, inflation is done year on year. So the first thing we need to note is that there was an increase, but the increase was at a slower pace. So where you compared for last month, which is the March 2025, at about 24.23%, it means that prices averagely increased by that amount. So now coming down to 23.7, price still increased, but at a slower pace. And when you look at the numbers, April 2024 has a very high base. That was when inflation also peaked. And as a result, when you compare it year on year, it's expected that it would drop. So what we are seeing, and it is broad-based, because when you look at food inflation, even on a month-on-month basis, drops significantly, and also core inflation drops significantly. So we're seeing that on a month-on-month basis, there's also a drop. But when you look at the rates of the month-on-month change, it still looks very high. Yes, it's commendable that we're seeing that drop, but when you look at on a month-on-month basis of about 1.86%, when you analyze that, that is still it's also significant, given that we have just rebased the GDP, the inflation rate. Thank you.
All right, but the worry is actually with the food. So first we saw that with the rebasing, there was less priority or value given to food as an item in our inflation baskets. Now we've seen disruptions in the agriculture space recently, the attacks on farms in Plateau State, in Benue State, the food basket of the nation. But it doesn't seem that's being captured in the food inflation data, or is it too early to expect that to reflect?
No, I think that is also weighted. You spoke about the insecurity. So when you look, for instance, looking at it on a state-by-state level, Benue State recording 56%. And when you look at their slogan, food basket of the nation. So if the food basket of the nation that should be during low food inflation rate is having close to 51%, that just shows so obvious that there's actually a problem. But because of the weightings, prices have moved significantly on the back of rising energy prices, rising exchange rates. So what we're just seeing is a bit of price correction that we're not seeing as much change like as we used to see. So that's what we're currently seeing, not that the impact that we're supposed to see. So you spoke about the food inflation that the month-on-month has dropped significantly. But when you look at it for food, last month, month on month was 2.16%. And for April now is at 2.06. It's still marginal, still a major problem because when you annualize this, that means that inflation, food inflation is still significantly, will be significantly above almost 24% for the year, which is not good for the populace.
Okay, so with this now, would we say we are in a declining rate when we talk about our inflation trend, or are we in between at this time?
Okay, I would say that it's still early to come into the assumption that we may be seeing a decline because of some of the, currently the inflation rate have been just being rebased. Secondly, and when you look at those numbers, they are just normalizing that even doing your forecast is a bit complex because when you are trying to compare it to previous numbers that was not rebased comparing. So what I would say is that when you look at the reality, what are the drivers of inflation? We see exchange rate has been a bit stable. Uh, Energy prices have been a bit stable thanks to Dangote refinery bringing down PMS prices. So that in its own, for most of the items, would not increase significantly beyond the current level. However, the insecurity level in the country is still very high, especially in food producing area. Based on numbers, so even if we're not looking at the news that is qualitative, Benue State should be one of the states that should have the least food inflation numbers, but it's having almost 50%. It means that there's actually a problem when you look at the amount of food that comes from Benue State alone. So it's nothing to be exciting about. Yes, it may look like a progress, but the trend cannot be established now, given a lot of the rebasing, recalculation that would also step in.
Does it mean we should expect a hold from MPCs next week?
Yes, so exactly. So it will be too quick for the MPC to make a decision because a trend has not been established. For March, there was an increase. For April, there was a decrease. So they may likely want to see what May numbers are if it also drops. So that would enable them to see that there's a trend that has been established. But given the stability we are seeing in the FX, yes, a bit of depreciation, but still manageable, and also looking at energy prices that has also been stable, I feel that there's actually no cause for alarm because the CBN also still needs the FX to keep coming in. So reducing interest rate at this time may stabilize the equilibrium that we're enjoying so far.
All right, we'll see what the decision will be. It's next week, Monday and Tuesday. So we'll see what the MPC will do about that and where we go from there. Thank you so much, Dr. Ayode Jebo, Managing Director and Chief Business Officer at Optimus by AfriInvest.
Always my pleasure. Thanks for having me.